America's healthcare advocate, Kerry Hall.
Hello, America. Welcome to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Our producer, Mr. Sean Floyd. I'm your host, Kerry Hall. Our producer behind the camera, Mr. Dave Thiessen. This is your show, America. Thank you for joining us and making us one of the most listened to talk shows throughout the country. The website is americashealthcareadvocate.com, americashealthcareadvocate.com. Shows are posted up there, information up there on the broadcast and the topics that we cover. I want to say hello to all the folks out in Pittsburgh, Kansas today, listening on 95.3 FM KWKN. They've been a long-time affiliate of America's Healthcare Advocate. We've got about 201 now across the country, but those folks in Pittsburgh, Kansas have been with us for a long time. We want to say hello to them today. If you have questions about Medicare, if you're chronologically challenged, like I am, okay, and you have questions about Medicare and the open enrollment period, everything that's going on, you want to reach out to good folks at RPS Benefits by Design, 877-385-2224. You want to talk to the lovely Carol Lee Steele. She is a Medicare expert. She can show you everything in the marketplace and help you pick a plan that is right for you. I don't care if you're in Arizona. By the way, we did a webinar out there in Phoenix a couple of weeks ago, had a lot of folks on it learning about Medicare. But if you're in Phoenix or you're in Kansas or you're in Florida, wherever the case may be, they are happy to help you anywhere in the country, 877-385-2224. And if you're an employer and you just got that happy notice that says your health insurance just went up 20%, you might want to call Maria Allers at RPS Benefits by Design. She is an expert in employee benefits, and she will be happy to help you anywhere in the country. Again, 877-385-2224. Well, joining me is an old friend of America's Healthcare Advocate, who the last time you did one of these radio shows, your name was Corrine Everson. You are now married, and your name is Corrine Dix. Welcome back, Corrine.
Thank you, Kerry. It's our pleasure.
Corrine and I have a little history. We worked together at St. Luke's. We worked together at HCA Hospitals. She is now part of Guardian Home Healthcare, and we're going to talk about that today. Joining her boss and the man who is one of the founders of Guardian and one of the founders of the pharmaceutical firm that they represent in Norton, Kansas, and other places is Chase Rice. Welcome to the show, Chase. Glad to have you on.
Yep, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Chase is joining us from Norton, Kansas, so we're very thrilled to have him on board. By the way, as I always tell you, all these shows are posted on our 14 podcast platforms along with YouTube. So Amazon Music, Odyssey, Overcast, Pandora, RSS Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, Pocket Casts, Rumble, Speaker, and SoundCloud Podcasts, and TuneIn, iTunes Podcasts. 68,000 of you have downloaded these podcasts so far this year, so we seem to be gaining some popularity. And there are 257,000 YouTube downloads, so we're pretty excited about that. And we thank all of you out there who are using the podcast in YouTube, and also all of our listeners on the AM/FM stations around the country. So let me start off with a little bit about Chase. Chase grew up on a farm near Smith Center, Kansas. By the way, that happens to be the home of Mitch Holthus, the Chiefs broadcaster we all know so well. That's where he was raised. He attended Hutchin Community College, University of Kansas School of Pharmacy. He has earned his Doctor of Pharmacy in 2009. He is the founder and CEO of Moffitt Drug. And we're going to talk today him about a number of issues that I think you'll find very interesting. In addition to that, he and his wife, Abby, bought another home healthcare company and changed the name of it to Guardian Health, and then they started to branch out. And Guardian Health is a Medicare-accredited health provider. Corrine Everson is the CEO of Guardian Health. So we're going to talk about two really interesting topics today. We're going to talk about home healthcare, and we're going to talk about what's going on in the world of pharmaceuticals. And here's the thing that I think is really interesting. I know you all know when you go into your pharmacy, there's a lot more going on now than just going in to pick up a prescription drug. You have pharmacists giving COVID shots. We have pharmacists giving flu shots. We have pharmacists doing consultations. Pharmacists are taking on a bigger and bigger role in our lives every day. That's why I was so happy to have Chase on and give us a chance to talk about, we're coming into the COVID season. We're coming into the flu season. It couldn't be a more appropriate time to have this conversation. So Chase, let's just start there. I've gotten all 4 vaccines. There's a 5th one out now, which is this booster. And there's a lot of back and forth about this, whether it's a good idea to take it. If you've got comorbidity issues, is is the vaccine going to affect that? So why don't you talk to us a little bit about that and tell us what your thoughts are on the brand new vaccine?
I'd be happy to kind of go into that. 'Tis the season, right? We're heading into cold and flu season. And so the new COVID booster, the CDC came out and recommended everyone receive a booster. We had a little bit of a delay getting it, but we do have it now, and it is available, and we're administering those boosters as we speak. It seems like the new booster, what I understood, was primarily targeted towards the Omicron variant, which is the most prevalent one that's out there right now. And they had the bivalent booster previously. Now it's just the new booster, which both of them were covering this variant, and that's kind of specifically what it looks like that they're targeting. So it is something that I definitely am recommending to patients.
Okay, I really wanted to hear that. So you are recommending it?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of tension there and animosity there with some patients and some people towards the COVID vaccine for whatever reason, right? But I definitely do recommend it, especially if you have any kind of comorbidities, co-health issues, respiratory issues, diabetes, anything that kind of decreases your immune system or makes you a little more susceptible to some of this other stuff that kind of goes along with it. And for what it's worth, we haven't seen, in our practice at least, a huge number of side effects with the COVID vaccine. And I definitely think that it is new. It is a new technology, but it's been out there for a couple of years now, and I really feel pretty safe recommending it to all of our patients.
Okay, so and that's really what I wanted to hear. And as far as the animosity you mentioned, and non-vaxxers or non-vaxxers, if they choose not to do it, God bless them. That's your choice. Okay, but for those of us, especially those of us over 65, okay, in my humble opinion. Okay, I think it's very important for us to get the vaccines because we are much more susceptible to having long-term problems and being a COVID long hauler if we have not taken that vaccine. So that's my opinion. Like I said, everybody's got opinions on this stuff, but I have taken all four. My wife has taken all four, and I'm really glad to hear what you said because there's a lot of talk around it, and I think it's important for people to hear it from an expert. You're a doctor of pharmacology. You clearly understand how this works, and the mRNA protocols. It's very interesting. I'm sure you probably saw that the lady who was the biologist along with the doctor that teamed up just won the Nobel Award for inventing the mRNA protocol. And what's interesting about it is they kicked her out of the University of Pennsylvania, moved her off campus, took away her funding, and she refused to quit. I mean, that really showed some significant determination. Now they go on to win the Nobel Prize, create this amazing vaccine, and the mRNA technology is now going to be used to target cancer and all these other ailments that are, conditions, chronic disease, etc. All because this woman had the guts to stick it out along with her partner. So, I have to say I'm amazed, when I look at what's going on in technology and medicine today. And like I said, I'm just really glad to hear coming from you that this is something you're recommending to your patients. Do you think we're coming off break here, we've got about 30 seconds. Do you think it's more important for seniors to do this than it is folks that are, say, under the age of 45, or do you think it's basically equal the same thing?
I think it is more important for people over 65 to get it. However, I do recommend it for everyone, especially with any kind of comorbidity issue or respiratory issues. I think everyone should get it.
Okay, so what just in case you don't know what comorbidity means, it means if you've got asthma, okay, or you've got COPD, or you've got any other issues, you've got heart issues, whatever the case may be, what you're hearing Chase say is you should get the vaccine. That's what he's recommending. All right, we're coming up on the break. We're going to come right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Stay tuned. We'll be back with more with our guests.
The Golden Rule. Treat others as you want to be treated. I'm Steve Keeker, and this is one of the founding principles of my firm, Senior Care Consulting. Since 2002, our value statement has included honor our mother and father, respect our elders, care for those in need, and treat your family as our own. We've been honored to help hundreds of families make one of the most difficult decisions they could ever make, serving them in their greatest time of need. If you're looking for someone who can provide you experienced and objective guidance when searching for a senior care community, reach out today and discover the services of Senior Care Consulting at 913-945-2800, 913-945-2800. Know your options and choose with care at seniorcareconsulting.com.
Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. My producer, the always perfect Mr. Sean Floyd, on the board, and behind the camera, Dave Thiessen, putting all this together so we can get it up on those 14 podcast platforms and YouTube. And of course, if you're listening anywhere in the country, and we will broadcast this show nationally, just so everybody knows, because we've got guests in studio that are going to talk about important topics. Chase Rice here talking about, he is a doctor of pharmacology, talking about, we just finished talking about the COVID vaccine, which he's recommending you get, especially if you are a senior citizen. And now we're going to talk about RSV and flu vaccines, and also Karina Everson joining me. She is the CEO of Guardian Health, a home health care provider. Chase is the CEO of Moffitt and Ward Drug, and he's talking about these issues, which are very different but very important. So let's go back, Chase, to this conversation again about vaccines. So RSV and flu are two separate vaccines. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes. When I say RSV, most people associate that with babies or children getting sick. Like that's one of the number one causes of illness among pediatrics. But more and more prevalent now is also that affecting an elderly population. Similar respiratory symptoms, but it is a different virus that's causing it. So therefore, a different target for the vaccine.
I was one of the fortunate ones that got it last year. Okay. Yeah, I know. And I remember going in to get tested, and the nurse came back, she said, "You've got RSV." And I said, "You're kidding me, right?" She said, "No, you've got it." Okay. And then I was put on a whole regimen. I think I got a Z-Pack, and I don't know, whatever else she prescribed that I took, but it was not fun. It was nasty. So if you are a senior citizen, if you will, chronologically challenged, whatever the case may be, it sounds to me like this is one of those areas where if you've got any kind of respiratory issues, and I do, I've got asthma, I've had pneumonia 3 times. So I seem to be very susceptible to this. How does that vaccine help protect you when you have those issues?
Similar to the flu vaccine and even the COVID vaccine, like we're trying to prevent these issues from happening. The whole idea behind vaccinating. It is a new vaccine this year, recommended for people 60 and up. Also, kind of an interesting target population with the new RSV vaccine is pregnant women, so that they can carry those antibodies. Their baby gets those antibodies to protect it from birth on. And so that is indicated for 60 and up, and also a certain period there in pregnancy. Pregnant women are supposed to get it too, to carry those antibodies onto their babies. But it is something new, but ties in with the flu, COVID, everything else. We're targeting the same population here, primarily. Definitely for those people at high risk should be considered.
So question, I've got 5 grandchildren under the age of 5 and below. So are those children susceptible for this RSV? Should parents be looking at that in terms of if they've got young kids out there that are toddlers under the age of 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever it is this something they should be paying attention to as well?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. You know that's the most common population for RSV to get it is babies and younger children. And so it's definitely something to be aware of and be cognizant about. And as kids are around their grandparents, kids spread illnesses, and
yes, they do.
We teach them to share, and they do it very well.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely something for that population that, hey, if you do have grandkids, if you do have a new baby on the way or born that you want to spend a lot of time around, hey, your chances of getting this are definitely increased because they could just pass it right along to you. So definitely kind of smaller population in there, but it would be very important for those people to consider getting it.
Yeah, I spent a week up in Pasco, Washington with my 4 grandchildren under the age of 5 last year. When I came home, I was sicker than a dog, and that was when I got the RSV compliments of my grandchildren who were coughing and hacking their heads off. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to get this. Yes, I did. So let's switch to the flu vaccine. So now that's a separate vaccine. So people need to understand there's RSV now, and then there's the flu vaccine. What's the flu vaccine like this year? Have they adjusted it for the new strains of flu? What are we talking about with the flu vaccine?
Absolutely. Every year they go in and adjust it for the current strains of flu. So hopefully, some years they hit, some years they miss, but for the most part, it gives you pretty good coverage. Reformulated every year. This year is no different. The interesting thing is, or maybe annoying thing is, it's all a separate vaccine, right? Your flu vaccine, your RSV vaccine, your COVID vaccine.
Right.
They are working on combining those into one or at least 2. I know I read an article about the COVID and flu vaccine, some trials with that, combining it into one. Which will be interesting and much more convenient for patients going forward. But as of right now, it's all separate pokes in your arm. However, it's a lot easier to get a poke in your arm than be sick as a dog down the road with one of those respiratory illnesses.
Yeah, and it's been 2 weeks fighting it or 3 weeks fighting it. And I remember when she told me I had it, she said, well, you're going to have this for 6 weeks. And I thought, oh, that's a lot of baloney. No, I had it for 6 weeks. It took 6 weeks before I was finally finished with it, and it was over and done with. So, this is why we do these kind of shows. You've got a doctor of pharmacology on here explaining to you why these vaccines are important and what they can do for you. And hey, if you're, like I said, if you're a non-vaxxer on the COVID side, you still probably ought to take a look at the RSV situation, certainly look at the flu vaccine. And if you are a seasoned citizen and you're subject to pneumonia, I've had it 3 times, okay, taking that pneumonia vaccine makes a lot of sense. I think it's probably the only reason why I haven't gotten it again, probably in the last 5 or 6 years, is because I've taken that pneumonia vaccine and it's made a big difference. So it's, that's, like I said, that's the reason why we do these kind of shows, to get this kind of information out to you and be able to explain, why this is something you want to consider doing to make a big difference for your health. So we're moving into this season, sooner is better than later. So if, again, you go to your drugstore, your pharmacists are giving out these vaccines, get the vaccine, and you'll be protected. And we come back from the break. We're going to change topics now. Now we're going to talk about home health care. And this is really important, especially to all of you out there that are chronologically challenged. And I'm going to read one line that I think is going to stick with you pretty well. And you probably have said this yourself. I'd like easy access to care, and I'd like to live in my home as long as possible. How many of you out there have said you're never putting me in a nursing home or a nursing facility? That's why home health care can be critically important. So we come back from a break. My guest, Corrine Everson, the CEO of Guardian Home Health Care, is going to talk about that and how they do it and what they do. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting on the HIA Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HIA Radio Network. My producer today, Sean Floyd, behind the board, behind the camera, Dave Thiessen, putting all this together and getting it up on the podcast platforms and on YouTube. Now, look, maybe you've got somebody that in your family that, doesn't want to take the vaccines or doesn't know what RSV is or is hesitant to take it. Go back up on the podcast platform. Listen to this. Let them hear. Okay, Chase Rice, doctor of pharmacology, talk to you about why this is important and what you should do. If you're going to make a decision, make an informed decision, okay? Don't make a decision out of emotion or what you see online or something that's on Facebook. Go up, listen to the podcast, listen to the information that the doctor of pharmacology is telling you why he thinks it's important to take the vaccines. RSV for pregnant women, I didn't know that. Okay, that's important. Okay, for toddlers, yes. Okay, and for those of us, that are seasoned citizens, it's important for us as well. So that's just one aspect of what he talked about today, along with COVID and the flu vaccine. So that's why we do the shows. That's why they're up on the podcast. All right, we're going to switch gears. Now, Corrine Everson, CEO of Guardian Home Health. I read that piece because when I saw that this morning, I was up doing show prep about 5:30 in the morning. I read that and I thought, boy, how many times have I heard I want to live in my home as long as possible? And, I talked to people who are caregivers or who have children who are responsible for them. And the first thing I've got a good friend whose mother was, you're not putting me in a nursing home. Well, if you don't have somebody in the house to help take care of them, they don't have a lot of choice sometimes. So this home health care, Corrine, is growing and growing and growing. You've got a tremendous background, working at hospitals like St. Luke's and HCA hospital systems. How important is this and why is it so important?
Well, Carrie, after working in hospitals for 30 years and then coming to the home care and pharmacy realm, it was right during COVID. And we certainly saw that people learned that when a loved one was in a nursing home, they were doing all they could to protect them. But that meant that there was no visiting. Those elderly people became very lonely. And then a whole new set of issues came into play. So Guardian Home Health started providing licensed home care services 5 years ago and was really ramping up right when COVID started. So we were in a good position to take care of people in their homes, although the vaccine wasn't out. So some people were anxious about having an individual come into their home, but we used all the precautions. And actually, in the past 3 years since the vaccine has been out and COVID has, obviously really gotten under control, we have really expanded and seen a lot more people be able to stay in their home because they're accessing home care services.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about who you employ to do that. You've got nurses, I'm assuming, at certain levels of care. You've got caregivers that go in and maybe help with daily needs, that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that works so people get an understanding? And this is really important for you in the sandwich generation, because if you've got that mother or father out there, or grandmother, grandfather, they're pushing close to 80 and they're having problems. This is something you need to understand. Corrine?
Absolutely, Carrie. So what we provide is either nursing, physical therapy, and occupational therapy that's ordered by a physician after a hospital stay or after a procedure, or it can be after a visit with their doctor and the physician or provider realizes that the individual has reduced strength, reduced balance, and so they order therapies and nursing to help someone maintain their level of independence. But we also offer homemaker services, and those services are offered simply to help people with housekeeping and laundry and food preparation, and also bathing, personal care, brushing their teeth, grooming. So there's a whole array of services that are provided by Guardian, and there's different payers that will pay for those services.
So let's go back to that for a minute, because you talked about ordered by the doctor. So, if someone, let's say they fall and they break a hip, which is a common occurrence, okay, in senior citizens, it happens quite frequently, okay. So they fall, they break a hip. They stay in the hospital until they've recovered well enough to walk, okay, or they're in a walker, and they come home. Are they able to actually have that nurse, that physical therapist come to the home and help them get back on their feet, literally start to walk again and become ambulatory? Is that part of what you do?
Yes, and I should clarify, there's actually really two different branches of services in the home that Guardian provides, and the one is Medicare will pay for it, commercial insurance will pay for it. And that's the nursing, physical therapy, and occupational therapy that really is all about helping someone either get to their previous level of independence or build their strength and sort of rehabilitate in the home, as well as have help with nursing issues like medication or wound management or monitoring incisions after a surgery. The other branch of Guardian is the aspect that provides the services that really, based on what an individual needs, it can be everything from clipping your toenails if the person's not a diabetic, to taking them for a ride in the car to go to dinner or visit the cemetery. We have a lot of elderly people who like to go
I know.
visit where their spouse is memorialized. So there's a whole array of services that we provide that help keep people comfortable and happy and safe in their home.
Yeah, because here's what happens, okay, and I've seen this. Somebody has an injury like that. They don't do the things they're supposed to. They withdraw further and further and further into themselves. They're not socializing. They're not getting out. They're not doing any of those things. And then they start having real problems with depression and other kinds of issues, right, Corinne?
Exactly. And that's actually one of the aspects of home care services that Kansas Medicaid and Area Agency on Aging, which is funded by the Senior Care Act, they actually do include services for accompaniment so that people can play games and have conversations. And maybe one of our employees is going to help them cook so they can do something that they have always enjoyed doing. So in addition to like the skilled, licensed medical services like the nursing, the physical therapy, and occupational therapy, there's this whole array of services on the other branch of our company that really provide a wide array of services for people of all ages, but primarily it is for the elderly.
Yeah, and so let's go back to that 1 minute if we can. So I think it's important people understand this can be paid for by Medicare or it can be paid for by Medicaid. Because or it can be paid for by if you have a Medicare Advantage plan, like many of the Medicare Advantage plans have robust home health care provided. Okay, so you can get those services covered by health insurance, correct?
You can get the skilled services covered by health insurance. The insurance that covers the homemaker and the personal attendant care is long-term care insurance. So people that have a plan that includes those homemaker services and the personal attendant care activities of daily living, then, in your broker experience, I know that there's a lot of brokers who tune into this program. That is an aspect of thinking about aging or being elderly is looking at long-term care insurance because it is, there's just a lot of different products. And we have a lot of seniors who are getting services in the home because they bought a long-term care insurance policy.
Yeah, Lori and I have had one now for 20 years. We bought it 20 years ago, okay, and with John Hancock. And it provides full home health care for the same dollar figure you would spend to stay in an assisted living facility or in a nursing home. So obviously that goes back to we can stay in our homes, okay? But those kind of services that you're providing that make a big difference to people. Before we go to break, we see a lot of families where the parents may still be in a small town out in western Kansas or, in Norton or wherever they may be out in Salina. Okay. But the kids now live in Wichita or in Kansas City. How important it is for them to know that these services are available and there's someone there that's going to take care of them the way they would want them taken care of. Before we go to break, Carrie.
That's one of the reasons I was so excited that you invited us to be on this program, because we do so many things in Northwest Kansas that are serving people in rural areas. But you're absolutely right. We get so many inquiries from people all over Kansas, but also all over the nation. And it's interesting how Mondays are always super busy with the phone calls and like right after holidays, because individuals had visits from their younger family members, right, and they recognize, oh, mom or dad's memory is failing, or they just aren't eating properly, or they need to have their sheets washed on their bed more frequently and their house cleaned. So we always are very, very busy when the loved ones come in from other parts of the country or other parts of Kansas and realize they need help.
Yeah. If you want to learn more, if you want information, their website is guardianks.com, guardianks.com. You can go up there, send them an email. They'll be happy to reach out to you and see if they can help you. Maybe you've got health care provided and you don't even know it, okay, under a plan they have existing, or there's a Medicare or Medicaid available. One way to find out is go to the website, guardianks.com, guardianks.com. They serve a lot of folks out in the rural community in Kansas. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate, broadcasting here on the HI Radio Network, coast to coast across the USA. We've got more. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA here on the HI Radio Network. My producer, Mr. Sean Floyd, behind the camera, Dave Thiessen, our other producer that does all this wonderful work on the podcast and YouTube platforms. Joining me in studio, Chase Rice and Corrine Everson. We started talking about, Chase is a doctor of pharmacology, so we spent the first two segments basically talking about the vaccines, all the different vaccines that are out there, and we're talking everything from RSV to COVID to flu to pneumonia. You heard that. Maybe you want to tell somebody in your family, you really need to go listen to this. Maybe this is something they're not doing that they should be doing, or you think they should be doing. Also, pregnant mothers, that's another topic that Chase talked about. So a lot of information there if you want to go up on any of the podcast platforms. And then we switch gears, and now we're talking about home health. And Chase, let's just start about this with this topic of home health again. The demand in the rural communities, is that growing? Is that what got you all involved and decided to move into this segment? You're pharmacists, you see a lot of what goes on. Is that what caused you to make that decision?
It really is. Like we're in a rural population, a rural community, and an aging community. And as those are my best customers, because as well as I do, hey, they're on more prescriptions, more drugs.
Yes, we are.
Go along with that is where the practice is going. We saw a nice tie-in between home health and pharmacy because we saw those aging population on more drugs, on more different stuff that's harder to manage. And that is kind of where the home health part comes in, that we can kind of tie those two together. Now, like at the pharmacy, we're doing blister packing medication or compliance packaging, or trying to keep your medication synchronized, that kind of stuff to keep you compliant, keep you taking your medication. But that's also one of the services like that home health is doing, or in a more general aspect, helping people stay in their homes for longer. And how can we tie these two services together to make it work better for both of us? And ultimately, our goal is to keep patients healthy and happy in their own homes.
Yeah. And Corrine, that's very interesting. Chase said that. Let's just talk about the medications for a minute. I can't tell you how many clients of mine over the years on the health insurance side would come to me and go, we're having a real problem. We can't get mom's not taking these meds on a regular basis. She's missing days. She's not getting them. Go back to that topic on home health care. And that is not necessarily a nurse having to come into the home. That's just somebody can come in and make sure, here's your pill box for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Are you taking them? And they can check and make sure they're doing what they need to do, right?
Correct. So actually, Medicare will pay for medication oversight and pill box setup for a certain amount of time for individuals who are either convalescing or have certain diagnoses and with a doctor's order. But also, as part of personal care services, that is a huge aspect of what is provided, is making sure mom or dad, grandma, whoever is taking their medication appropriately and on time.
Yeah, because as Chase said, we are the group that takes a lot more meds than the younger folks do. And that's just life. Okay. I mean, but that's the one side of it. The other side of it that is good news is you've got the meds to take. There are medications today that do things that couldn't be done 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So there's two sides to that coin, and I think it's pretty important. So again, a little bit about, Chase, if you can, pharmacy seems to be growing. It's more involved than it ever has been. When I grew up, you would never think of going to a pharmacy to get a flu shot. I mean, that just wasn't something you did. Now, this is the norm. You go into your pharmacy and your pharmacist is giving flu shots and vaccines and doing all kinds of other things that we're doing. What do you see on the horizon now as we talk about technology, AI, and all these different things coming into play? it seems to me like the role of the pharmacist is going to continue to grow. Am I right or wrong?
Absolutely. Throughout the COVID pandemic, it was huge for us as a profession because we were available to people and we were able to show the ability to do some of this new stuff that's on the horizon for our practice, as in like test to treat with COVID treatment, the antivirals that were available, we could dispense directly to a patient with a positive COVID test. That kind of laid the groundwork for some of the stuff that's going forward. There's a lot of technology that we have and is available to us to be able to do the traditional stuff. Hey, count 30 pills for you, or hey, here's your prescription, whatever. But the role of the pharmacist is increasing into, hey, do we need flu testing or strep testing? And we can do that, and we can dispense now with state protocol to do so. And it's more of a, we're not replacing a doctor, but we're increasing availability of healthcare and improving the quality of life for our patients.
Yeah, because the problem is, okay, and if anytime you've tried to get into a primary care doctor, you certainly run into this. First of all, just getting into a doctor and connecting with the doctor, Kareen. I mean, you got to go on the portal. You got to go on the portal. Look, I'm not a tech guy. Okay, I don't like going on the portal. I want to pick up a phone. I want to call somebody. I want to talk to somebody. Good luck. Okay, it just is not the norm now because these physicians are so overwhelmed with the number. The average primary care physician does over 1,000 patients assigned to him or her. I mean, think about that. Okay, they're seeing 20, 30 people a day. The average time with the primary care doctor in this country is 7.5 minutes. You're not going to get a hell of a lot done in 7.5 minutes, Kareen. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is important that this role continues to grow. And I think it's great that you guys are bringing this to the forefront and you're incorporating this now in home health.
Well, and with all due respect to primary care providers and providers everywhere, it is known that individuals see a pharmacist more often than they see their doctor or their provider because we're retail, we're open. People can walk in and ask a question. And Chase is kind of humble, but actually Moffitt Drug and Ward Drug were the first two independent retail pharmacies in the state of Kansas to start this test and treat program that he just mentioned. So it's now up and running. So individuals can walk in, pay cash, get a test, get the medication that they need, and walk out within minutes or depending on the demand.
If you're interested and want to learn more about home health care or any other issues, you can go to the website guardiankansas.com, guardianks.com, guardianks.com. Thank you both for doing this today. That was a great show. A lot of good information out there for all the folks. That's why we do these. Thank you, Kareen. Thank you, Chase. We greatly appreciate you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie.
It was great to have you on. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll leave you with this thought from Albert Einstein. The one who follows the crowd will usually get no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone will likely find himself in places no one has ever been. Remember, friends, it's a funny thing about life. If you refuse to accept anything but the very best, you most often get it. Thank you for listening to America's Healthcare Advocate Show, broadcasting coast to coast across the USA. Goodbye, America.